Welcome back to another podcast. Sat next to me is a very special guest, a long-awaited guest, my ex-teammate, former housemate, Bailey Antrobus. What is the message?
Thank you for having me. It's a great day. Sun's blazing. Life's amazing.
Sun isn't actually blazing right now, but life is amazing.
It's all perspective, innit?
Bailey, coming back off the back of double ACL surgery, back-to-back ACL surgery, what's going through your head when you get the scan back and you find out that you've done your second ACL in 2 seasons?
Mate, it was one of those ones you always prepare for the worst because if you get good news, all right, sweet, it's better than I thought. But the bad news, your worst case scenario, prepare. I remember sitting in the flaxes, the old gaff. It was tough times. It was raining outside. It was already bad weather, and then just hits the phone call. I know exactly what it's going to be. I was telling my doc, like, don't tell me, and he goes, yeah, mate, I'm so sorry, I have to tell you. And I was like, please don't tell me. He's like, you've done your ACL, and just the tears started rolling down. You just know all the hard work you've just done is coming again. And the worst part is it's not the 9 month. The 9 month isn't the worst part. It's the learning to walk again, going through the pain, the throbbing, and just knowing you have to sit there and watch your teammates while you're helpless.
Yeah, 100%. And I know when you gave me the heads up that obviously you'd done your ACL again, I was gutted for you. I was proper heartbroken for you. But I think having seen the process of how hard it was to come back from the first one, obviously a non-game injury when we were training when you did your first ACL, and then seeing your grit and determination to come back from the first one, and then hearing just after a few games you've managed to do a second one, which is not uncommon, is it?
No, it's not very uncommon. You hear, unfortunately, a lot of people do it again. It's a heartbreak of a world. It's one of those ones, the game we play. You can do anything in the world, you try your hardest, and it just unfortunately goes. There's not much you can do about it. That's the game we play.
So talk us through, obviously, the rehab. You've done your first one, 2023?
Yep, correct.
Tell us about, obviously, the rehab, back end of the season, middle of the season?
Middle
to back end of the season.
Yeah, it was a tough one because the boys were doing so well. I think, correct me, it was like 10 from 11 that we got. So obviously got the news at training afterwards that I've torn my ACL. I was quite lucky. I got the surgery over here and I was able to fly back home. And I definitely think it makes it a lot easier, the team that you have around you. Like, obviously, there's the core group of boys that you know at York, like yourself, at Jesse and all those boys, they've got your back, which was always amazing to have because you got to sit there and realise everyone's got your back no matter what, but they're not going the day-to-day struggle of, trying to straighten your knee, forcing yourself, going through that pain. They're out there training and you just know that they got your back, like no matter what they can do. You just got to go with it and they got your back. So it's a tough one, learning to walk again, going through the pain of pushing yourself where you're in agony, but you have to do it. You just take each day by day. It's one of those things where every ACL person knows that you just don't know, each day's going to be different. And you just, as Jade Knockenball said in the podcast, you're in the rehab crew. It's the same thing like you said with your shoulder. You're on the bike, and you're getting flogged for about 6 months straight,
Yeah, 100%. And we obviously ended up briefly in rehab crew together. As the 23 season finished, I got my shoulder up, I got my labrum tear sorted out. That was playing with all year. And you're absolutely bang on. Like, those times when you're in rehab, they're dark as fuck. People don't understand, like, the reason when we're playing rugby that we enjoy it so much is actually being around the boys, because there are highs, there are lows, and I always go on about this, but actually being able to go to train and get out on the field, and it's that one release. Like, some lads have kids, some lads have stressful jobs that they go to, whatever it may be. But when you're out on the field, nothing matters but training. And then when you're playing, nothing matters but playing. But when you're isolated in that rehab scenario, it's not quite as easy. You're sort of just away from the group. You're missing out on the crack and the banter that's going on. And not only that, you're in your own head saying, am I ever going to get back? Will I ever be the same as I was prior to doing this injury, which is a tough place to be mentally.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, you come back in after training, the boys like, oh, fuck, this happened, and you're just like, oh, shit, I wasn't there. Like, it sounds funny hearing it, but it's not in the moment when you're there. And you just have to sit, obviously, you know what it's like at York training, you've got the big glass windows there, and you're just sitting there just like, I want that spot. I want to be out there. I want to be doing this. And it's a big learning curve. Sometimes in the rehab crew, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And you've got to have that tough, but also a bit of a joke in rehab to get you through it. A little bit of shit here and there, but you just have to sit there and watch your teammates succeed. And it's the best thing ever, watching your teammates succeed. But it's even better when you're next to your mate and going, we just done this together. You know, when the boys get a win, you're like, fuck yeah, this is the best ever. But there's no better feeling after you look at your mate and just go like, and hug him after a game. It's like, we just won this. But like, oh, I'm running water. Like, yeah, sweet, this is mad. But I just definitely think that the rehab is dark, but you got to make those times last, because that's the character that builds you who you are. If you can get through a rehab, especially say your shoulder, you know, you definitely think like, I can do this. This is nothing. This is a walk in the park. I'm going to beat this. You don't let it get to you, because the day it beats you, you've lost today. But it's not about how you lose today. It's how can I get better myself for tomorrow. You don't think, I'm going to be back in 9 months, I'm going to win this. It's small little steps. Each little victory will set you up for the long-term goal. And in the rehab crew, it will make you the better person that you are. If you can get through it, you're mentally and physically tougher than you've ever going to be before.
Yeah, it is a mental battle, and being able to come through it is something that people don't understand how difficult it is, but also how many lessons you learn in going through that sort of period of injury and being sidelined for a little bit. I think obviously I've had a couple surgeries, and you learn through each one. For yourself, obviously you've done it now twice, the exact same injury, opposite knees. What did you learn from the first time going through that full rehab process, and how have you adapted your training this time? Because I remember after the first one, you went back home to Oz for a bit. You were working with the Dragons physio, am I right?
Yep.
So that's where you come through. You came through the Dragon system. We'll touch on that in a moment. But you're working with the Dragons physio, and you're like 3 months post-op, and you're deadlifting like 220 kilos. And we were all like, holy shit. One, this lad's a freak, but two, like, is he going to burn out? Do you know what I mean? So what have you learned off doing it the first time, and then how you've balanced and rolled into the second time round?
Yeah, I was quite lucky. So I had one of the physios that's been at West Tigers as well and stuff like that. His name was Steve Jackson. He was amazing. And also Rob Jameson, he was my rehab person. Then obviously over here, I had Jack Buss. They've been outstanding. You know, I couldn't have done it without them. But it's one of those things, sometimes less is best. You try to think, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And your balls to the wall. I think that comes from us being athletes. We're so used to being the best person that we can be, and we're very competitive. Like, you know, how many times do we see, you know, you do 200, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do 205. Then I do 205 and you're like, nah, stuff this, I'm going to do 210. You know, in a Bronco, you see, you might be like a couple meters ahead of me. I'm like, nah, I'm not letting Ronan beat me, especially in the bragging rights in the household.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's just a competitive nature. But you just got to learn sometimes less is best. You obviously have your goals short term. Everyone has that 6 month or 9 month goal or 12 month goal, but you got to break it down to short terms, because the short term wins is better than the whole long term, because you can look back and be like, sweet, I've ticked this box off. Not, you know, the 12 months, I'm not hitting my targets. It's small little wins. The short term investments will set you up for the long term goal. And I definitely think that's the small focus is on. It may be, you know, walking with no crutches in 3 weeks, little as that, or even being able to walk to the fridge and back with no crutches in the first month. While some people may have I want to squat 180 in 2 months. It's not uncommon. But you got to set.
You literally did it. He just had to drop that in because he was squatting 180 2 months post ACL. Absolute freak, quietly.
But you also got to remember, value your team. Listen to the team. For example, your rehab crew, your physio crew. Listen to them. They're the experts. There's a reason why you get paid the good bucks. But also listen to your mates, because they know you best. Like, for example, I'd become home absolutely in the trenches from, like, you know, big sessions, and you'd be like, bro, just have a day off. And you can actually realize how much that energizer will actually have on you. You got to listen to your teammates, listen to your team, because you're going to feel so isolated. You're going to feel so head in the sand of just wanting to get this whole done. You just want to play, and you're so focused on something, but you're not going to be actually see the other aspects of life. For example, you know, I'm just so focused on the rugby league, but like outside, you know, I may be not sleeping right. I may not be doing my nutrition right, or may not be, you know, kind of balance with the mates. Why you can like, bro, you need to do this, bro, you need to do that. And it's like, yeah, fuck, if my mate's pulling me aside and saying I need to work on this, it's 100%. So it would just come down less is best, and listen to the expert and listen to your mates, because they always got your back.
Yeah, for sure. And I think sometimes when you're in the mix, you don't see like what it looks like from an outside view. Do you know? So having someone there like me and you always bounce off each other and going, listen, lad, like you need to take a deload day. You're gonna burn yourself out, or strike a bit of balance, or work on your nutrition, you know, and that it's good to have that accountability. I think what I see within my clients, especially people who are in season in the rugby season, is they try and do too much when often less is more. Especially in season, we play contact sport. We're not bodybuilders. We're not training for photo shoots. We're not training to get on stage. We are athletes. And the biggest thing is fatigue management and load management. So the importance of holding on to muscle tissue within the season is huge, but trying not to accumulate a hell of a lot of fatigue through weight sessions, which actually don't move the needle on the pitch as much as recovering, optimizing your nutrition and doing all of those things. So it's striking that balance. And I've been on both ends of the spectrum where I've not trained enough in the gym, and therefore like my collision wasn't good, or I was losing muscle tissue and I was finishing a season looking a bit deflated. And then I've been on the other end of that where I've done too much on the weights training side and too much in the gym, and I've actually not been focusing on the fact that I play with a rugby ball. I'm not a bodybuilder. So it's striking that balance nicely. I think for you, obviously, we're really close, and I've seen your journey and your personal growth and your development. For you, obviously, the nutrition thing was crazy. It was crazy, and it's got better. It's got better, but it's still mad. Like, obviously, when I met Bailey, the man lived on chicken nuggets and chocolate bars, and he's the most jacked bloke I've ever met in my life. But it has gotten better, and like obviously living together and me bouncing off you and throwing a few ideas. You know, if you're throwing out shit, as the saying goes,
get it out.
If you throw enough shit at the wall, something's gonna stick. If I tell you enough times, bro, you can't just eat bird's eye chicken. You're bound to eventually, the penny will drop. So now you eat steak.
I think the bird's eye chicken was more a version of like Harrods compared to what I was getting. The old Aldi ones. What do you always say? What was your word of my Coke when I used to have it? The battery acid Coke.
Battery acid Coke, yeah. That was crazy. But yeah, listen, picking up on little things, and that's sort of the benefit of footy, isn't it? When you're living with other lads and you're learning what they're about, and that it's sort of crazy, really. And then sometimes I think I learned a bit off you that you can eat whatever you want as long as you train hard and perform on the pitch. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Like it's something bizarre that I had to sort of learn to take in as well, because I'm sometimes a bit of the other side of the coin, that if I don't do everything right, I get in my own head about it, and sometimes it's not actually the case. Like, and I've learned from people who have played with throughout the years that you have to just go and play a game and not worry about whether you've optimized everything within your control. You want to do that, but if something doesn't go to plan, there's no reason why you're going to have a bad performance. Like, that's just a bit of a bullshit excuse, if anything. Taking us back to where you came through, obviously coming through the Dragon system, was rugby league always your goal?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely always was. Whether it was league or union, it was one of those ones. I just wanted to be an athlete. That was always the dream. You know, growing up in Wollongong, there's a very big rugby league, a lot of history there. It was always everyone's dream to be an athlete where I'm from. If you play in the sport, you know, there's many people that you look up to and you just want to succeed. And I absolutely loved it. Every bit of rugby, my journey through the Dragons, starting at 16 all the way up to, got to do an NRL trials, which was good. You know, obviously it wasn't the full quid of NRL debut. I got to do an NRL preseason, which was amazing, and made some friends, made some memories that I'll never ever forget, which is good in rugby league. As you know, you make memories and make friends for life.
Yeah, for sure. Growing up, did you always have that vision? Because obviously a lot of people don't know you also have a university degree. So how were you balancing all of that coming through the system, 18s, 20s at Dragons, 16s, 18s, 20s, and then studying as well, and then obviously doing an NRL preseason? Because that's not easy, and people don't see that side of the sport, that like not everyone manages to kick on to the NRL or kick on to the Super League, but a lot of us still have to have something in our back pocket. And in your case, you were studying a university degree, which is mad.
Yeah, I know. You look at me or the boys that know me, you think that no way this bloke's got a uni degree. The way I act sometimes isn't the smartest bit. No, it was very, very tough. I came straight out of high school, and I just thought I've got to do something, because rugby league career is not forever. You know, you can't be, I want to say 40, but we know some greats that are still kicking around at 40, like, you know, Kumatai, he's nearly at 40. Kermo is nearly at 40 playing. There's some great people like that. Let's just say 50. You know, I just want to have something. And also, your career can be cut short. For example, look at Jarrell Yao. Yeah, he was young. Injuries retired him, you know. It's one of those ones, have a backup. It was pretty tough because I was also working about 30 hours a week, which isn't full time, but when I was obviously training, and that was the goal. I wanted to be a professional athlete. And, you know, you go through 20s, it's the hardest thing sometimes. You know, you have to go to work. And for example, the boys in Cup, you go for work. Some boys are on the tools at 7 o'clock. You don't finish till 3 or 4 o'clock, then you get the training for 5, and then you're absolutely getting belted, you know, conditioning in the preseason, especially in Australia. It's like 30 degrees sometimes. It's not easy, but that's definitely the character building which makes you realise, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to be a professional athlete. I want to play rugby league. An example of that is Melbourne Storm. No matter how many NRL games or State of Origin Australia, they make you do 2 weeks of work. But when I was also over here, it was a bit of a transition. I had to do a university degree for like exam at about 3 a.m. in the morning UK time, which was a bit rough. But it's one of those ones, you know, you got to set yourself up. You know, if you look at you, for example, rugby is obviously your 100% goal, but you do your PT. You got to separate yourself. You got to educate yourself so that you do have the backup plan, but also have a bit of extra cash coming in because you want to set yourself up, and that's the people you want to be surrounded with.
Yeah, for sure. You always have to have something to fall back on. I think touching on that, like being on the tools reminds you so much about why you play rugby. I think for me, in my final year of academy at Huddersfield, I used to get up at about 5:30 in the morning, down some coffee. My breakfast used to be orange juice, creatine, and oats, 100 grams of oats, and I'd put it in a blender and I'd just smash it, and I'd run out the door, and I'd get the bus at 6:15. So if I wasn't out the door at about 5 past 6, I'd miss the bus. So I'd leg it to the bus, get on the bus. I usually would literally be running at 6:10 to make this bus. Get on the bus down to work, and where I'd get off, I'd walk by this car garage. And as an academy player, I was literally, as I said, getting the bus. All I wanted was a car. And I'd walk past the car garage and I'd look in and I'd just be like, oh my God, one day I'm going to get a car. That's all I wanted. And then I'd get to the pallet yard and I'd be working building wooden pallets. I'd be on the tools all day. So that's what was giving me an income as such. And I'd be saving up me little bit of cash that I was getting. But sometimes I say, nearly all the time, I'd get a phone call from the head coach at the time at Huddersfield, and he'd bring me into training with the first team, with the Super League. He said, I need you in for scrimmage, I need you in for 13 on 13 or whatever it may be. And that was the happiest moment. Like, it sounds stupid. It was an escape, yeah, but I was buzzing. One, because I didn't have to work, even though I would get no money. So like I'd be losing money to go to training, which is stupid. So if that happened like 3 or 4 times in the week, I'd be living off like next to nothing for the week. But I didn't care. It was like, yes, I don't have to go to the tools, and I have a reason to leave. So, you know, I'd run out there. I'd run into the gaffer's office. I'd say, listen, I have to go to training. He was a sponsor of the club, so he was sound about it. Run down the road, get on the next bus, straight to field, like backpack on, chuck the work boots in the office, and I was gone. But that was the best ever. That was my escape, and that was my hunger. So even though I'd been up at the stupid o'clock in the morning and I'd been walking for 2-3 hours before I got called to go and train, I was just happy to do that. Do you know, and it puts a little bit of perspective on what you're doing, in that when you've gone through that time, and like you said, you've been managing a job, going to university, training with Cup, doing an NRL preseason, and then you're coming over here, managing that and experiencing that makes the fruit that much sweeter when you get to taste it and actually like make a professional debut. So you come over to York. We don't quite cross paths straight away because I was actually injured. I just got my ankles operated on. So you get to York. I'm still at Huddersfield doing my rehab. And at the time, there's 2 Ronans.
This is when I'll start laughing. I knew exactly what was coming.
At the time, there's 2 Ronans at York, and we have a mutual friend called Roland. So you go up to Ronan Dixon and you say, do you know me mate Ronan?
And he was like, who the fuck's Rolly? And I was like, oh shit, this is a great first impression.
and from that moment on, you're the crazy Australian who arrives in York. So tell us a little bit about that. Obviously, you're with the Dragons still. You're playing a bit of cup. You're playing as a winger.
Yep.
A winger who can't catch balls?
Yep. Kangaroo paws.
So tell us a little bit about that, being at the Dragons, and then you get the opportunity to come over to the UK, and obviously we'll touch on the Welsh side of you as well.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to do the NRL pre-season. I was on the wing, which was a bit different when I'm normally a back row or middle. Can play a bit of centre here and there. But, did my training trial for about 22 weeks, which was good. And then, I got called in the office and said, you're doing really, really well. You just got to work on a couple of things. We're going to put you back in a cup, which is a bit of like pumping up my tyres. Said I had a great pre-season, which I thought I did. And then just get straight back down. I was like, oh, shit, this is a bit of a reality check. But went back to work as a support worker, and then I'd do some night shifts, which was pretty tough. As everyone knows, that's been on a night shift. It's pretty tough. Then I'd get a phone call at maybe 8 o'clock when I'm about to go to bed, like, hey, mate, can you come do a scrimmage? Sort of like with you. And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll come in. I'd even cancel work if I had work, say one other time. But off a night shift, no sleep. I just want to be around the boys again. But it just wasn't quite working out. I just thought, I want to challenge myself because I don't want to be the small town syndrome type thing. You know, you just stay there the whole time, and what could have happened if I went away and challenged myself. So I ended up talking to a couple of clubs. The Super League wasn't quite working out with the quota spots. Then Clint from York said, "Yep, come over." I had a meeting them with my agent, the coach James Ford at the time, and also Clint. And then we said, "Yep, we'll call you tomorrow to see what we want to do." Got the call at Friday like 10 o'clock at night. I was on a 6 a.m. flight at Monday morning that week. So lucky it was Mother's Day, or his mum would have killed me. But we sort of had this in mind. You know, I had the Welsh passport ready to go, or sorry, the UK passport. I was always going to be a second option for me. You know, 25-hour flight, rocked up like 3 a.m. Clint's there, picked me up, and I've just gone, holy shit, this is so different. You know, you see the London, like, you know, the London taxis, you see the platform at the King's Cross, 9 3/4, you're like, holy shit, this is different from what I'm used to. This ain't a beach. Where is the nearest beach, you know? And I'm coming in, I'm seeing York, you're seeing like all the Minster and that, you're like, holy shit, this is different. But it was an amazing experience. I remember falling asleep during my first video session. After that day I got in, lucky you weren't there, you would have been absolutely pissing yourself, but one of the boys was nudging me and giving me a laugh. But it was a different experience, York. I loved it. I haven't looked back ever since and gone like, oh, I regret this. It's been amazing. You know, look at it, I wouldn't have met you. Well, technically we already met, you know, when we were playing Dragons. We didn't realise that we actually met when we were 20, playing against each other when he was at Canberra. But I love York, you know, the memories I've had here, the boys, you know, and there's such more things to come.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the footy world is a small place, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, like, as you said, we didn't even know we played against each other. And then, what, three and a half years on, we're living together. You know, it's a crazy small world. You arrive in York, it's a bit of a culture shock, isn't it? First time leaving home as well. What's going through your mind those first few months when you're in the UK, you're playing in the championship, you're meeting all these new people, you're literally on your own as such, trying to figure it all out. What's going through your head in comparison to obviously being at home, you have everything set up for you, you're in your local town. What's the difference when you're experiencing that initially?
Yeah, just little things, you know, like obviously if I want to go to the shops, I know, yep, go down this left, right, oh, I need to go there and there. Not knowing what phone company I need to get with, like how to get a bank card over here. You know, it's so different. And I'm sure you've obviously gone through that as well when you moved over, but it's just little things, you know, you're not in your comfort zone. But I think the best thing you can do is get out of your comfort zone, because you're never going to learn. You're never going to learn how far you can get or how much you can challenge yourself. It's one of those things as well with York, you know, in the championship, you know, you say, yeah, we're going to spot so-and-so today. I'm going like, who the fuck's he? I never heard of him, because obviously I didn't know these people. And Ronan always likes to joke, I'm the person that knows the least about rugby league players at all. So I'm just like, I'd be on the field, I'm like, who am I getting at? And they're like, yellow boots. And I'm like, oh, sweet. Because they're all saying the names. I'm like, I don't know who that player is. But luckily on the back of the jerseys, you got your names. I'm like, oh, sweet, him. But the whole competition was different. Back home is a lot more technical, a lot more wrestle. And that while someone just wants to go bash the shit out of you over here, which, you know, it's fun. It's fun sometimes. But obviously at the time you come back and there was more people coming in. I'm like, the whole loan system, I didn't really have that much idea about. I'm like, sweet, met all these boys. I know everyone's names. And someone else comes in. I'm like, well, where the hell did he come from? And they're like, oh, he's been at Huddersfield. Well, where's he been though? Like, why has he been at Huddersfield? The system was a shock. And then obviously, you know, some weeks you play Lee, it's like ex-NRL team. And then also some teams you can play like just got promoted. The whole relegation promotion thing was a bit of a shock, because that's not like that. But the championships are great. It's a great opportunity for people to come test themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's something that, yeah, I suppose when you're comparing it to odds, it's not necessarily the same, is it? There's no loan system. There's nothing of that sense. Obviously, you kick on and you sign at York permanently, like, whereas you only came for half a year initially, didn't you? And you sign on another few years at York, and you get to represent your family's heritage in Wales. What was that like, playing in a Rugby League World Cup and getting to represent, like, obviously your old boys' side of the family?
Yeah, fair win culture is everything. You know, it defines who we are. You know, without it would be nothing. And it's a great way to say, look, Dad, I'm going to make you proud. And there's nothing better when you get that jersey. You know, you see your last name on there. You just know that, like, your family's been through a lot. For example, you know, my grandparents took my dad's family of 3 at the time on a 2-month boat. Like, that would be not easy. You know, then the tough times over there, having to go through a whole new system in a whole new country. You just think there's sacrifices for them. And there's also many things where you just go the whole down the Antrobus line. You know, obviously I don't know too far back of it. I can't say what they were doing 100 years ago, but you just think this is all for them. And there's nothing even better when your family makes a trip over and you see them in the crowd wearing Welsh jersey, Welsh flags, and it's amazing. It's one of those ones where a dream does come true. Obviously, we didn't win a game, won the World Cup, but that was the best 5 weeks of my life, as I'm sure you can say with Ireland.
Yeah, the best. I'll talk about all day how much I love playing for my country, and love the World Cup experience was absolutely incredible. Like, I'm still heartbroken about the fact that we won't actually be eligible to qualify for the World Cup next year, which is gutting. The group of death: Papua New Guinea, Tonga, and the Cook Islands.
Could have got someone like on our level, would have been nice. But the problem is, though, there was no pressure on us. There was no pressure. We all went in and said, boys, let's just have fun. We had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 full-time people that were in Super League. So there was no pressure. There wasn't like, for example, Tonga, we scored, I think, 1 or 2 tries first, and that was when the pressure was on them. PNG, a lot of NRL players in there. Cook Islands, a couple, but you'd rather have a tough pool. I'd rather be like, all right, let's go see how good we are, as opposed to, they had no full-time. They haven't really got the NRL development yet. Well, you just go, no, let's go toe-to-toe with these boys. And that was tough but amazing.
Yeah, getting to test yourself against the best, that's the best opportunity in the world. And it sort of stands to you, doesn't it? Because I know off the back of that World Cup, obviously, you come back into pre-season at York after a bit of an extended time off, to say the least.
I was quite lucky, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened, how I ended up after the World Cup with 2 weeks off, and you ended up with about 6 weeks lapping up the sun back home with Oz. But you come back in and you were killing it at the start of the year, mate, and you hit the ground running, and obviously that sort of takes us up to present day, back-to-back ACLs, and you're in that rehab moment now. What do you think is the biggest driving force now when the second ACL scan comes back and you're going, are you thinking about, do I just throw the towel in and go home? Or what's going through, where's the mental state at? Because I know, when you're so far away from home, you've been so isolated for so long in a rehab situation, and then you've just come back. You played 4 or 5 games for York back end of 2024, and then you 3 minutes into your Welsh game, friendly as well against Jamaica, it goes again. The other ACL. Are you thinking, is it time to call it a day?
There was never once where I said, yeah, let's just call it a day. There was never once that thought, I have a duty over here. I have an obligation, not only to the club, but myself. I didn't move halfway across the world for nothing to have a cigar out and go travel. This is the dream. This is the job. I want to succeed as much as I can. Obviously, you're thinking again oh, shit, deja vu again. Anyone that has to do an ACL is tough, let alone 2. But there's people I know that have done 3. But it's the crew that you have around you. Like I said before, they're going to get you through the tough days. Shout out to you. When I was on the lounge, couldn't move and stuff like that. You're heating my food up for me and stuff like that. It's the little things that you have, you boys coming home and laughing back, come on, Bales, let's go do this, let's go do that. Or you drive me around. Obviously, there are other people in my life that I can't thank enough that actually did a lot for me, and they all know who they are. But also, it doesn't have to be your family members that are the ones that are always on the phone. Your mates, if you have misses at the time or anything like that. It's just little things. There's also people at the club, Matty Lewis, as is a great bloke. And they're just, you got to surround yourself in a good team. Because if you're not in the good environment, your head's going to be in the sand. You're going to want to go home. You're going to think, is this really enough for me? This is my second one. Do I call it a day? But no, there was never one time I did. But again, surround yourself with the good people and they'll get you through the tough times.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the bond that we had at York, and that was obviously the why we're friends for life, regardless of what club we're playing at. But obviously you touched on that, you're not over here just to travel, but we get the benefits of getting a few weekends off here and there in rugby, and you've managed to see a little bit more of the world, considering you've been over here for a little bit of time. What's that been like, obviously experiencing new cultures and figuring out that not everybody speaks English like yourself?
Mate, I don't speak English. You got to get the translator, the subtitles on here. To be fair, it was last year, I said to one of the boys, Joe Brown, I said, is it actually good you've been able to understand me now? And he goes, mate, half the time I don't know what the fuck you're saying. And Joe Brown, you just got to laugh at it. But no, it's a different culture shock, but we speak Australian. It's a bit of a different English, isn't it?
I don't know what you speak to, if I'm being 100% honest.
You just go, yeah.
Just not in wave. That was what it was like for the first few months. Training away from training, you've been absolutely flying, really. What does it take? I suppose, what does it take to be in the most jacked state, probably the most jacked rugby player I've ever seen, to be honest, probably built more like a bodybuilder. And tell us a little bit about the fact that you don't drink, because most people, when they say they don't drink, like myself and obviously people like Jesse and that, like, take periods of time off drink. And I think it's becoming more common now, because lots of players are starting to realise that if you get on the piss the whole time, you don't necessarily feel great, and it's not great for your body, and you get injuries and inflammation, all that. And to be honest, you just feel shit. You just feel shit, but you don't drink at all, which is obviously a bit bizarre initially, especially when people meet you and you say you don't drink at all, and people go, why? Do you know? Because people kind of have that assumption that every rugby player like loves getting on the piss. I don't know if it's a wrong assumption, to be honest, but you know, people have that assumption that every rugby player loves to get on the piss, and then obviously stumble across you and you don't drink at all. Tell us a little bit about that. And I genuinely believe that's why your body's in the shape it's in, and you can fill yourself up with ketchup and chicken
and dinosaur nuggets
and still be jacked. But
no, it's one of those ones I'm not against. You know me, I'm the first one to go like, oh, let's go do this, let's go do that on an evening or after a game. Like, let's go to Rebs, for example. You know, I love the Rebs message in the sun after a game down by the water. Or like, you know, if it's a good win, I'm all for it. But it just doesn't interest me. I don't have any, you know, family issues where some people can say, like, you know, my dad was a drinker, this and that, or my mum was a drinker, or my grandparents, something like that. I don't have anything like that. I'm quite lucky. I come from a good family and anything like that. You know, a lot of people don't drink for footy or rugby. Like you said, you know, they go through periods, which I think is great for you boys, you know. It just shows that you're taking pride of your body. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a beer after a game. It's well deserved. You go through that pre-season, that tough time, and, you know, shout out to you boys. A lot of you did 75 hard, and that really tests yourself with the no drinking and stuff like that, but also the whole foods and also discipline. But everyone should have a beer. You know, it's one of those ones like, you know, it creates a good culture around rugby. I'm sure the best conversations about how you've had around having a beer, but it's also when to do that. For example, a lot of rugby players don't drink during pre-season. They dedicate, you know, the rugby goal of themselves as opposed to the party lifestyle. And I think that anyone that not necessarily had a drinking problem that just goes, you know what, I'm going to hang out the drink for a while, even if it's dry July or something like that, you know, shout out and credit to you. Good on you. It just shows that you're disciplined, you're doing well. And like you said, there was a fair few of you that decided to go, let's hang out the towel for a while with the drinks. And you did so well. And I think you could see that you were in one of your best shapes in your rugby career. You know, you were killing it. Your post-contact meters, you were looking amazing. You were doing well. But also when we got that week off, like we said, we sometimes get, you got allowed to let your hair down a couple of times, but also, you know, switch back to reality, like back to work. And I think that sometimes the drinking does put a negative stigma on the game, because there's so many people that is like, there's all everyone that drinks out there. And I think rugby players can sometimes take a good example of your textbook, you know, not drinking, like you said, Jesse didn't do it, Cookie didn't do it and stuff like that, and use great examples.
Yeah, definitely. I think it has some massive benefits, and I'm the first person to enjoy a few and let my hair down on a buy around and go away and have a good time. And obviously, it's great when you come with me, because we have a designated driver. So
the security
guard's with me. You can save me when I'm blind and take me home. But no, it is striking that nice balance. Obviously, you touched on that. Obviously, your family, and you said, like, how important is that family to you and the support network you have back home? Like, growing up around having that like close sort of proximity with your family and close relationships with your family, and growing up in Wollongong.
Family's everything, you know that. I'm lucky I've come from a great family. I've always been looked after. You know, if I've needed something like support, my family would always be there. Like, as you know, your ma's your rock, you know, she's a very lovely lady, and your stepdad's always got your back. You know, it's good that they make the trip over. I know it's only an hour flight, but, you know, they'll fly in, fly out for you. And they're the ones that always have your back through thick and thin. You know, sometimes they don't like to tell you that you're wrong because they just love you, but it's the best when your family like do tell you you're doing well, but also let you know when you're in the wrong. And it's not necessarily a negative thing. They're just trying to benefit you. And I think with having a strong support crew of your family, there's nothing you can't do.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm incredibly grateful for the support that I've had from my family. Making this journey over, obviously it's completely unconventional for myself. My journey was something that nobody had ever done. Nobody had ever been part of a Super League academy at all from Ireland. I was the first person to do that. The next person following me up was Sam Webb Campbell. He's now at Hunslet, which he's sort of followed in my steps, came through Huddersfield a few years after me. But nobody had walked that path before. So when you're walking a path that nobody's walked before, it is like you're so isolated. And I was lucky to have my family who were just like, yeah, do it, go for it, why not? But it's so scary when you're doing something nobody's done before, because there's no system to follow and there's no one to go, oh well, he did this, or saying, for example, in rugby union, you might not have a family friend or you know someone who'd been in a similar situation before. I had none of that. I was literally the only Irish kid who's ever come over and given this a crack. So having the family network around me is so important, and I'm so incredibly grateful. I can't talk highly enough about what my family gave me to let that opportunity happen, because I was like a 17-year-old kid when I came over here before my 18th. They had to like obviously support me. I had money that I'd saved up from working in McDonald's, but that didn't suffice for the whole time I was on a trial, not getting paid at all. They had to support me. They had to help me get this opportunity, which again, like I can't thank them enough for. Going to all boys private school.
Fuck's sake.
How did that shape you in terms of the competitor that you are now?
Well, I know how to tie a tie. That's what I learnt.
But you don't have it on.
Nah, I know. That's why. I was quite lucky, you know, that's area where I'm from, Wollongong. Obviously, that was a prestigious boys' school. You know, you've had some great players like Tristan Saylor, that's over here now. He's playing. He went there. Ben Craig, that captained the Dragons, he went there. It was a great school. I'm quite lucky. I don't think Dad was too impressed when he realised I can't read and write too great, so he thought that was a bit of a waste of money. But little things, you know, like, for example, it's going to sound silly. I know at the time I'm 14, you know, having a diary to say, you know, assignment due this place or this time, you know, I have to submit this and that. I'm like, why do I need a diary for? But, like, you look at this now, like, we're always very, like, you know, I've got a client this time, I need to do this by, say, 10 o'clock, and I feel like it's set a good example of how I can benefit myself in the future, being very professional and very efficient with my time.
Yeah, definitely. And we enjoy a bit of journaling now and a bit of structure to our days. I think as you dive into the rugby game and you get more and more deep in professional rugby, you realise the importance of that structure. What does a day look like for you now? Tell us a little bit about your life, rehab, and obviously the work you do alongside rugby as well.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people, you come over here and they go like, oh, what are you doing? You say, I play rugby. They think like, oh, like, you know, that's all he does. You know, unfortunately, in the championship, you could be on a part-time contract. You know, you don't get the wage like someone else would in, say, the Super League, but it's one of those ones where you got to think, okay, sweet, how can I invest so much time myself to make the time? Because, you know, when we first were at York, you know, we go for coffees 4 or 5 times a week, and we're like, I'm spending £3 on a coffee. You know, you just have that like 2 times a day, or it's like, yeah, I'll shout you, you know what I mean? And then it adds up and you get a bit of lunch while you're out and you're like, what am I doing with myself? You know, I'm wasting valuable time that I could be, one, educating myself, you know, to a PT course, a uni degree, or even just like, I'm not sure the equivalent over here is, but like, you know, say like a counselling course, you know, electrician course or barbering course to set ourselves up. And it's what I think was also good. I see you was when you were like starting to do your PT stuff, and I was like, oh, yeah, I probably need to get a job. A day-to-day, I could work 80 hours a week. Sometimes over Christmas, I was a bit of a loner. I work at a homeless support centre, shelter in York. You know, sometimes I can do 20 hours a week, which is good. They're very flexible with rugby because obviously rugby is the goal. That is 100% end game that I want over here. I didn't come over here just, you know, the work holiday visa and play a bit of rugby. But it's one of those ones, it makes me realise how lucky I am in my situation I am in when I've seen those people, but it's good to help those ones. Obviously, there are some stories when it's like, we need to get this on a Netflix documentary because some people wouldn't believe it with some of the stories that happens there. But it's amazing. You come home, you feel like you change someone's value, and you also get to come to rugby, which is also, like you said, the escape. You know, and I come home, I'm with my mates. Obviously, I'm not with you anymore because you decided to take a better contract, which was a bit shame. But as I was proud of you, you know, I didn't want you to leave. You know, we used to have so much fun memories together. And just on our days off, you know, we used to train together. We used to always be like this to each other.
Yeah.
It was come a point where also the day-to-day we're like, holy shit, we're in each other's pockets 24/7. And it also...
You're making it sound like we were dating.
Yeah. We met together. What's wrong with that?
No,
he just doesn't want to say it live on camera.
As you said, listen, like that balance between work and footy, especially in the championship, is massive. When you rocked up to your first day at work,
so I rocked up at work, and one of the person who lives in the hostel, he came up to me and said, "Oh fuck, when did you move in here, mate?" And I was singing, "Fuck, this ain't a good start. I fucking work here." And that story's obviously been told a couple of times. And when I was to talk about work, and I'm around Ronan, but like, if they haven't heard the story, like, tell him what happened. They asked you on your first day. It always makes Ronan laugh every time.
They thought he was one of the boys in there. Did make me laugh. But like you said, obviously when we first all came up to York, we moved in together. We were literally like living the full time life sort of still. You know, that's what I was doing. I was transitioning from being full time at Huddersfield and then getting used to being in the championship, being a part time rugby league player and getting used to that transition. And that was something that took me a bit of a while to get used to. And not only that, to start building out my personal training and online coaching business and getting involved with that. And not only that, like figuring out who I was away from footy. Because like you said, the job that you work now is very flexible around your games and around when you need to be at training and where you need to be if you have like physio appointments and things like that within the day. Like you have a very flexible job, and I needed to figure out who I was away from footy and find a job that worked for me. So I began like obviously personal training at David Lloyd's initially and growing my business from there. But I think that's one of the biggest things, is that finding that structure and that flexibility, because at the end of the day, like you don't want your career to be wasted away in an office for the whole time, and then you go, geez, I never got to spend any time with my mates. But at the same time, like you said, financially you need to support yourself, and that's sort of why I stepped into this space of online coaching and wanting to really help support like other people who want to get themselves in the best shape of their life. And that's what sort of sparked my goal, because it's what I'm big into, you know what I mean? And like you said as well, you touched on it, we get to hang out then away from training because we're both like on bizarre schedules, and we both might have a random Tuesday off and be like, right, come on, we're going to the gym together, or we're going to go do a sauna.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where we've been quite lucky, especially when the rehab together, we got to train together, we got to push each other. And it was one of those ones where we sit together. I think you got to surround yourself with the good people that you want to be surrounded by. You know, you don't want to be someone who's just wants to watch Netflix all day. There is nothing wrong with Netflix. You know, I love a bit of a Netflix. You know me, Mike TV loves a bit of Netflix, or whether it's Uncle Mike on the big TV, you know what I mean? Like things like that. But I think you can push, if you surround yourself with the people that you want to be surrounded on the same goals, on the same journey, they're going to push you. Like we could have easily had the cigar out, the Cuban, just, you know, like, oh, how good's this? And especially you're not going from full time, you don't know what to do with yourself, you're a bit lost, you don't have the schedule. But then you've able to switch into the online business. Obviously you started off at David Lloyd's. You know, I used to, you know, hear the coffee machine going at 6 a.m. or a 6 a.m. client, and we used to love the 6 a.m. client cancel dance, didn't we? But you know, the fact that you've gone on that journey to then evolve yourself onto online, it just shows that it's not, a business isn't built overnight. You know, the hard work that you put in outside the business, for example, the long hours, the client calls it late, but also physically, you know, trying to get yourself in the best shape. Because if you want someone, if you're a scrawnier person, you know, you want to get better goals, or the kids that you develop that are going through academy with your rugby program training, you know, like he's playing this, he's doing this, I want to look like that. I think that's a credit to yourself. But I definitely think the part-time was a bit of adjustment for us. But I couldn't ask for a better person to be around, you know, because we definitely pushed each other to get where we are now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like my biggest thing that I pride myself on is, why would anyone believe me about what service I can give if I don't live and breathe it every single day? You know, if I was out of nick, or I was being sloppy or being lazy and rolling out of bed at midday, then who am I to preach to anyone about how to live their life? I wouldn't be that person, and that's why I try action that every day. It's funny you talk about, obviously, us being in rehab together. You're coming back from your ACL, and I was in shoulder rehab. So we did a lot of leg days, obviously, because I couldn't lift anything above my head for a little while. But
it's on YouTube. Go watch it, guys.
check the videos of us training together on YouTube.
Give it a like, comment, and subscribe.
It's funny that, though, because I look back at that time, and even though we were in the trenches, like there's some of the like funniest memories and some of the most enjoyable times I had, like in my time in footy, is that we were both in pre-season, we were both flogging each other, and we were just going to the gym like on our days off together and just enjoying like that absolute grind of trying to get ourselves back fit and healthy and ready to play again. And it's like sometimes like you forget that you're in the good times until they're gone. You know, when you're with your bro, and I'm going, I used to go to you, come on, we're having a pre-workout shot, and you'd be like, no, leave it, no, go. I'd be like, bro, we're having an explode shot, and we go and smash a session. And they're the times that like, it's so simple. It's not the big fancy moments or the big games. It's just the simplicity of enjoying the company of someone who's so like-minded and wants to train hard. It's the best ever. It's peak male experience for me. It's the best. It's the best ever. Yeah,
it's one of those ones, you know, the fans don't see how much hard work you put in behind the scenes. Everyone wants to celebrate you when you're at the top. You know, no one really wants to see what you do behind closed doors. Everyone wants that big view at the mountain, but obviously you've got to train to get there. We did some dark days together where we'd be flogging ourselves. We could have easily had the cigar out when the boys had a bit of time off, but obviously those boys deserved the time off. They were playing, they did the pre-season, so they deserved it. But we were like, nah, we're gonna train here. The biggest mistake someone is, take the foot off the throttle, kick their feet up, take the victory lap when they haven't quite deserved it, because there's always that one person that's like, no, we're gonna get this. We could have easily gone away, done something. Even when we were in Marbella, we trained together. We were in Malta as well a couple of times. We're like, no, let's get this, because that's the type of people we are. Obviously, when we're hack squatting, we'll just be like, come on, let's get the 6 plates, come on.
Another plate.
Yeah, 100%. Even say like, I'm struggling with that, the 50s. The 50s on the dumbbells, when you could bench press, that was the big goal for us. We were always pushing each other. It wasn't like, oh, shit, Ryan got this. Why can't I do that with my knee? It was like, fuck yeah, you did that. But I hate you coming to I'm coming for that as well. But I think that's what drove us to become the people we are. Because if we just wanted to let someone take the victory, like, oh yeah, he did better than me. We're in the wrong sport. But there was nothing better than just being side by side each other and like, we're going to better each other. If it's in the gym, it's mentally, there's something. Because some people just don't want to go to the gym or the rehab. It's the same thing day in, day out. But you're always like, nah, come on, bro, let's go. Or vice versa. I'd be like, come on, G, nah, chuck another plate on. Admittedly, I sometimes can't count the plates. You'd be like, did you put a fucking 25 on? Yeah, well, it's on, so we've got to do it now. It's pushing each other.
That's it. Once it's on, you can't take it off.
No, it's illegal.
It's illegal. Once it's on, you can't take it off. Bro, the best thing I think I see when we're training together is we're doing side laterals. So I'm coming back from a shoulder. So my side laterals weren't doing great. And this fella's doing the whole stack, yeah. And then we see him at work. The next day and he can't move his neck. I'm like, what's happened to you? And he was like, oh, side lateral raise 56 kilos. I was like, 56 kilos on the side lateral. No wonder you can't move your neck. That's like insane.
Yeah, I think everyone's got those strengths. It was a bit too crazy, but you look at the way you bench with your dumbbells. And also, I think your shoulder press is like probably one of the best things I've ever seen of you. But also, there's certain things that I'm just like, holy shit, how do you do that sometimes? Like, for example, your Bronco every single week, the times you were getting, I was like, this bloke is on demon time. There was definitely some SmackDown versus Raw getting played to get him on the playlist to get him to where he is now. And we just sit there and just be like, holy shit, some of the things we do.
Yeah, well, that's it. Put the SmackDown. If you're struggling for motivation, SmackDown versus Raw 2007. Put the playlist on. Go to the gym. Problems will be solved.
Facts.
Listen, that's therapy. That's our therapy. SmackDown versus Raw 2007.
That and also Uncle Mike on the TV. Shout out Mike Thurston after a game. Both of us could never be able to sleep after a game. The caffeine, the adrenaline, and just also you're on the highlight. We good. What was it? Uber Eats. We ordered. Bang. Uncle Mike. The Uncle Mike Sundays were on.
God,
peak male experience.
God bless. God bless. Bailey, looking forward on, obviously, not to get too far ahead of where we're at, but you're a few months off actually getting back playing. What's the return date?
I've got August 2nd in mind. I want to be playing against Oldham. That's the goal. I've got home game as well. But I understand, sometimes, you may take a step forward and may not get that heat date. So if I get within 2 weeks either of, I'd be happy as. But 9 months is basically that goal. That's the 2nd. So that's what I'm set on.
On a mission now, aren't you?
Yeah, I've been on a roller coaster of a journey. It's been up and down, but that mission is that I want to get on that 2nd of August.
And when you're running back out after the first ACL, obviously, what was going through your head? Was there an element of fear, or were you feeling confident that you were ready to go?
No, I was thinking, holy fuck, I've trained the house down. I was still blowing my ass out. No, it's one of those ones. I was not. You do all the contact in the world, you do all the prep in the world, and just the whole. The crowd getting behind you. I got a bit emotional because I was quite lucky. I came on after we scored. Mash came in, Bales, you're on. I was meant to play 15, and I remember waiting for someone to come off on the sub, and I was like, let's go. Then obviously the boys are there chatting, and I've just gone the couple of boys Bales is back, let's go. And I was getting fuck, let's go. And it was even better because obviously that was my first game with you and Mardo together as the whole Flax at the time. But yeah, it was definitely different. No fear because I'd done all the work, but I was just proud to be back out there to myself. I deserved it. I did a lot of effort, a lot of work to get there. But it was just even better just to be found in a home crowd and also the score that we put on and just be back with the boys. Full credit to the boys.
Yeah, man, that was special, I have to say. Obviously, seeing how much you've been through in that rehab and then getting to share the field with you was really special. I think the thing that you touched on there was, obviously, you have a date in mind, but setbacks do come. You did 2 hamstrings in that rehab process. So obviously, coming back from an ACL is the toughest thing. And I know we've talked a lot about ACLs, but back like 2 hamstrings,
Yeah.
coming back from rehab, you have to be looking up to the sky and going, when's this going to end?
Yeah, so I had a hamstring graft, so naturally they've taken that out. So my hamstring was going to be a bit weak. I remember I was RDL and I was doing my rehab, and then he just popped. The sniper came and got me. Don't know where he was in the gym, but he got me. And unfortunately, I was like, oh shit, this is going to be a setback. And then I was doing a bit of rehab again. I was flying, killing it. Speed was good. Then it just felt a little tweak in the other hammy, and I was like, oh God, this can't be it. But it came from I was doing so much. Unfortunately, we got given a week off, and I'll never forget, all the boys were away. This comes back to what I said. I was like, nah, I'm locking in. I'm grinding here. These boys have had the time off. I haven't had the time off, so I didn't deserve it. But you try and do all the right things. You know, could have been in Spain somewhere, could have been partying or something like that. I was like, nah, I'm locking in. And unfortunately, got sniped again at YSJ training. But unfortunately, it's a character testing, you know. You just got to think, nothing's going to change. How can I be better? You know, could I have done a bit maybe warming up? Do I have been trained too much? You know, and you can reset and go, okay, let's do something differently and let's get it. Don't let the little speed hump set you back. You know, in the whole 12 months, you know, I think I've had my ACL done. I can get through a hammy. Hammy's fine. Obviously, I thought I had needed surgery on my hammy, but lucky I didn't. So I just said, stuff it. Let's just get on with it. Nothing's going to change. Let's just crack on with it. You know, if this is the worst thing in my life right now, I can get through it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of those things that you touched on there was feeling like you don't deserve what you get. Do you know, I think that's something that, as competitors, we're always going to say, I don't deserve a break. I don't deserve what I've gotten. Like, you sort of get that self-doubt sometimes, especially when you're rehabbing something, that you don't deserve, like, the rest. But rest is not a reward, is it? Yeah. You know, and that's where, like I said, I've learned the lessons. I've walked that walk. I've fucked up my pre-seasons. I've lost loads of weight in pre-seasons. I've messed up my rehab where I could have been better. And that's why I've learned those lessons. That's why I try, like, have conversations like this and implement it into my coaching to sort of try and make people realize that you need someone monitoring you. And that's probably what you're missing, that like, having that close eye at Bailey, you're going to do too much, something's going to go here.
And I definitely think that came back to you. You know, you see me some days, you know, I'm usually up early most days, and you're like, you look wrecked today, and you're up at like 8 o'clock. Or there was just like, you know, I'm not maybe lifting that weight. You'd be like, bro, you just need have a break, go away somewhere. And I definitely think that comes back to, you know, I learned from the first time, sometimes less is best. And I definitely think that back in the day, it was like, you know, I'm going to train, you know, this and that. I'm going to train balls to the wall. And we come to realize that's not the best thing for us. We're not bodybuilders. We're not trying to be posting stuff like that. You know, we need to sometimes have our rest day, recover. And that could be as simple as, you know, you can still do something, go for a walk. Like, you know, walk into town, go for a sauna, go for like just a 200-meter swim. Get yourself moving in other aspects so you can say, I've done something.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes you need that mental achievement of saying I've done something, but using a rest and recovery day. Like, for example, for me yesterday, it was I did a flush out on the watt bike. I did a yoga session, so I did a stretching yoga session. I got in the sauna, I got in the jacuzzi, and I ate some good food. And that was like a recovery day. So I still haven't taken a day off. Like, I'm a big believer in not stacking days where you don't move towards your goal. Like, every day I want to move the needle towards what I'm trying to achieve, which is obviously the best rugby player I can be and delivering a quality, like, business and coaching business. But I'm a big believer in no off days, no destruction days. So days where you sit on the couch, you're watching Netflix, you eat shit, and then you regress, you take backward steps. But a progression day sometimes is a rest day. But you can do active recovery, you can do active rest, you can work on other things in your game that's not, like, destructive. Do you know what I mean? That's just progressing, but it's not very fatiguing. Like doing a heavy deadlift day yesterday, or a heavy squat day yesterday, wouldn't have actually benefited me on the field come Sunday at all. But I've still moved the needle towards my goal, just in a recuperative way, rather than something that's going to destroy my body, which I think is something, like you said, that you've learned throughout these rehab years.
Yeah, definitely. You know, how many times would it be like, come on, Ronnie, let's lift this heavy? Like, no, I've played, I need to be better. And I'd be like, oh, fuck yeah, he's right. He's played, I haven't. You know, and there's also times where you'd be like, Bales, do this, do that. Why don't you give this a go? And it's like, yeah, he's right. He's at his point where he's learned and come through that. Because I know you, back when you were, say, like 20, 21, and obviously I know you at 22, you were going hell to the wall, like trying to outlift everyone, which is, I love the competitiveness about you. But then 2023 came round and I'd be like, bro, like, come on, lift at me. You're like, no, I need to be smarter. And I've gone like, yeah, this bro's right. He's hacked that glitch. He's learnt that. And I was like, I need to learn from that. You know, there's a time and a place. You know, that preseason, it's going to be dark. It's going to be hurting. Your body's going to be aching. But come that game time, you've set yourself up and you can obviously have that deload time, which I definitely think was one of the learning experiences I've had with you. And if the little things, you know, like you said, you know, you have some good food, you can go for an active recovery. That watt bike, you know, obviously the watt bike brings back bad memories in the preseason, but it has its benefits, you know. And I definitely think that's the maturity that you get in the game as you get older. And it's a good way for you to inspire, you know, those boys that are coming through and your clients, you know, don't have a day off, you know, don't do the Netflix or don't go on a pizza or a bender, you know, just have fun and just absolutely smash it.
Yeah, I think that's key, isn't it? It's stacking the wins, compounding, and just not taking backward steps. Really. Looking ahead, then obviously the week that's coming up after this, when this podcast will release, it can't be tough. Obviously, watching the boys make it to Wembley and knowing you're not going to be there, so you're going to be sidelined.
Yeah, I can't wait to do some Broken Broncos at Wembley. You know, that'll be fun. No, honestly, the boys have put in some effort. They absolutely deserve to get to Wembley. Obviously, it was heartbreaking to have to play against my best mate, or not me, but the team had to play against my best mate on that Sunday in the semi-final before. Yeah, I'd rather it been us at Wembley versus yous. But at the end of the day, the boys have put the effort in. They're going to go down there and do the best. And it's going to be, obviously you're going to have that want to be playing. If you didn't want to be playing there, you're in the wrong sport. You know, you shouldn't be in this. But the fact that I feel confident that the boys have put this hard effort in there, they're going to go down and get the win. I'm going to be proud because you've got to celebrate your bros' wins. Whether it's a little thing like, you know, say when you were younger, you know, you got that car, celebrate that win. You know, your mate got the PB, celebrate that win. The boys win Wembley, celebrate that win. And I'm going to be there full supporting the boys. I'm definitely going to be shocked because obviously there's so much history in there. You know, the whole Challenge Cup and 85 Cup is such a big integral game of the sport. But also you look at, you know, the boxing that's been there, the concerts that have been there. It's such a thing. Who would have thought me at 18 going like, yeah, I'm going to go down to Wembley.
Yeah.
But obviously I wish I was playing, but I definitely think it's time that York get this win. Obviously we didn't win that year that they made it. I think it was against Featherstone as well. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think it was 2021 maybe they were there. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I definitely think the boys are going to get that win. I just can't wait to celebrate with them. And I think they absolutely deserve it from, you know, we've been unlucky 2 times, that we didn't make it. Obviously you were part of those both times. You know, it's frustrating. But I definitely think that the York deserve it. It's going to be a great experience, and I can't wait to see the boys do well and win.
Bailey, if you were talking to your younger self, what advice would you give them, knowing what you know now?
Take a shitload of creatine, drink coffees with your mate. No, honestly, I definitely would say trust the process. Trust the process. It's because you may think, and why am I doing this? Or you're going to be in the trenches. Just trust the process, the compound interest that you say it's going to come. And when you're in doubt, just think it's going to work out. And I definitely think surround yourself with good people, like, you know, yourself. Don't be surround that person like, oh, come have a beer with me at the pub. No. I want to be the bloke that's at the gym training. You know, sometimes you got to also not be afraid. The orchestra, he turns his back on the crowd. He leads someone, you know, don't be afraid to turn your back on the negative external factors that are going to influence you. You know, just be with those that want to be with, you know. Doesn't matter as well if, you know, what situation with your mate. Always be there for him and just celebrate each win, whether it's your win, his win, because he's going to have your back. And I think just, yeah, surround yourself with the good people that you want to be around, that you want to be associated with, that's going to take you on that journey of success.
Yeah, for sure. You're a combination of the people who you surround yourself with. And like you said, for the younger people out there, take a fuckload of creatine and smack a load of blends. You've only just started smacking the blends as well.
Oh, mate, I used to hate it. I remember when I was in the NRL pre-season, I did a coffee club at like 6 o'clock or like, you know, before the gym sessions after field, the boys were like, coffee. And I'm like, oh, just a Coke, please. And I'm like, fucking what? And I was like, yeah, just a Coke, please. And I've obviously, you know, I remember I'd force it down at coffee with you. And I'd be like, oh, this is shit. Now I'm smacking 3 a day. I definitely think it's a good social aspect. I definitely think, you know, when we were younger kids, you know, we wouldn't like coffee. I know you used to always put it in your mouth at school, you know, that I remember hearing that. But I definitely think that's a good way into, if you're in a professional team, say the older boys go like, hey, we're going to go for coffee, who's keen? I definitely think as a younger person, put your hand up and be like, yep, I'll come. Because, you know, you earn the boys' trust, you know, you earn respect. You can also hear stories about them, of how they've developed as a player, but also just be around and form relationships and bonds.
Yeah, it's key, isn't it? It's key. I'm I think you're a good man for a coffee. You'd come even if you weren't smacking them, to be honest. And we used to always enjoy. So Bales used to organise the coffee. He'd say, "Yeah, coffee at 12, anyone?" We'd all turn up, and he'd be sat there with no coffee, just waiting for the boys, and we'd be cracking up.
Do you want to tell them about me not drinking coffees in Marbella? What I said as well.
Bales decided to not drink coffee in Marbella because he said he was trying to be normal. I don't know what version of normal you've been listening to for the last hour, but it's evidently not been working. But the man has now purchased a coffee machine.
Yep, on the Breville.
Officially obsessed.
Who did I get that off, that idea?
Hey, listen, I've taught him well.
I just haven't got the latte out like you. But no, I've learned a lot of things, but how to make a flat white, I learned off you.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, all jokes aside, listen, I'm extremely grateful to have someone like you in my corner, and obviously, if it's not clear, the friendship that we have, the laughs we have, but more importantly, having somebody to bounce off, and iron does sharpen iron. I think like we touched on, the people who you surround yourself with are everything. The saying goes, if you surround yourself with 5 taxi drivers, you're going to be the 6th taxi driver, and being around people who push you to go harder and go, like, you're taking the piss here, is massively important. And if you're coming up and if you're coming through this journey of trying to make a pro at sport, or you want to progress in your job, or you just want to progress in your life, you have to actually have a good check and a good filter through what you're doing and who you're surrounding yourself with, because that is so important. And I knew before I ended up making a pro at rugby, before it was even my dream, I knew that I wanted to be surrounded by good people who motivated me to be the best version of me. And that path took me to rugby, because a lot of the people in this sport are highly motivated and they try and push you towards where you want to be. But before that was even a thing, and before I even knew that I was destined to play rugby or I got the opportunity, I knew that I wanted to be surrounded by like-minded people in a positive environment. And that's what I'll always say, that if you're surrounded by that and you have good people around you and you have good mentors, like, it is inevitable that you'll succeed if you apply yourself. And I look back at my younger days when I didn't have the people who I know now and the people who are in my circle now. I was just looking at, what can I replicate? Who can I look at for success? And I was watching YouTubers, and I was looking at trying to find out what the pros do. And there was no platforms like this, and there was no TikTok and that. But I was trying to replicate what the pros do to try and cultivate that environment for success. And to sum all that up, I'm grateful to have someone like you in my corner, and that we can bounce off each other. And like I said, iron sharpens iron. And even though you're the maddest person I've ever met in my life, like, it is true that having people like that who drive you to be better will always outweigh anything else.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of the maddest people you met. I'm a bit of like Alan off The Hangover sometimes, but no, I definitely think that you surround yourself by the right people. Like, I'm truly grateful. We've learned a lot of each other, and not just from the gym or anything like that, but just life experiences. I couldn't have asked for a better housemate. I couldn't ask for a better mate. When we were obviously just us two, we had a good time together. It was absolutely fun, but it was also like, look, we're going to fucking crack this. We always send TikToks, reels together, like, we're going to make this. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but we will. And I definitely think it comes back to surrounding yourself. If you don't surround yourself with 5 good people, you're going to end up like the people that they are. For example, if they're absolutely drinking and bendering all day, if they're partying, doing drugs, or they're not motivated for a job or to succeed, it's just like, just going to get by. You know what I mean? Like, that, you're going to end up like them. While, like, for example, I'm surrounded by you, who's an absolute freak in the gym. I'm going to push to be like him. Ada, for example. Ada's very, what Ada's like. He's very, very, he'll tell you right or wrong. He'll give you the news straight to your face, And Jesse as well, he's got a bit of wisdom as well. Mardo, he's good to train with as well. And I can go all day. I've got some boys back home. Shout out to them. They know who they are. But I definitely think just surround yourself with the good people.
100%. Bailey Antrobus, that was a serious message. Thank you, my man.
Thank you, my brother.